Okay, welcome to the class observation webinar. This is guidance for site coordinators. Just a reminder that there is a separate webinar for lead agencies and one for observers as well. That's going to give you more information that you need. This one is for site coordinators. Start off with a little overview of what we're going to look at today. We're going to start with looking at coordinated observation expectations. Then we're going to look at kind of the overview of the observation system. There's something unique to site coordinators and that they have a read-only option. So we'll look at the two different types of site coordinator access, then do a brief walkthrough of the functions that you can use on the portal, and then we'll wrap up with some support for site coordinators. So coordinated observation expectations. Expectation here is that during each observation period, every classroom should be observed at least once, and 10% of classrooms at every site should be shadow scored. We're going to unpack what that latter thing means a little bit later in this webinar. There are two observation periods over the course of a school year. You've got a fall observation period and a spring observation period. Fall lasts from August 1st to December 15th, and then spring lasts from January 1 to May 15th. During each of those, every classroom should be observed by a reliable observer at least once, and 10% of classrooms should be shadow scored in both the fall and the spring. A reminder that observations need to be submitted no later than 10 business days after they are completed, and that observations are only ever scheduled by lead agencies for local observers and by ULL or the P-Card Center for third-party observers. Lastly, a classroom configuration does not change over the course of the school year. What we mean by that is that if the majority of children are in a classroom and they're toddler, and over the course of a year they become pre-K age, the classroom would still be considered a toddler classroom for that year and should be observed using the toddler tool. So, a classroom should only ever be closed when it is set up under the wrong classroom configuration. What do I mean by this? I mean that if a teacher leaves a classroom and is replaced by another teacher, you as a site coordinator or your network coordinator, if need be, you can edit the classroom and you can change the lead teacher's name. You do not need to close the classroom for that reason. However, if a classroom is opened under the wrong configuration, so if you open up a toddler classroom as pre-K and that needs to be changed after the fact, then unfortunately the only way to do that is to close the classroom, create a new one, and put the information back in there. So just be sure that you're checking the classroom configuration while you're setting them up and not doing it afterward. You'll create a lot of extra work for yourself. You as a site coordinator, you are, whether you're a principal or you're a director or possibly a lead teacher or master teacher, however it is that your site sets this up, you are added as a site coordinator in the portal. And that is done by, we can do it here at the department, but it's usually done by the network administrator, which is your lead agency. A couple things to know about entering observations. It's possible that you as a site coordinator will conduct some observations during your time. There's a lot of, it's a sensitive portal, and for good reason. We don't want people to be able to come along and change information, but it quickly will time out if you leave it open for too long. And so we want to talk through some ways to avoid that, as well as some other user errors. So first and foremost, when you're playing around with the portal, plan to use a computer, like a laptop or a desktop. Don't try not to use it on an iPhone or a tablet. It is not formatted to do that, and you'll have a lot of user errors and cause you a lot of headaches. Try to limit the amount of time between each cycle when you're entering in observation scores. If you wind up needing a longer amount of time between two cycles, you can always just save and log out. When you log back in, you can pick right up where you left off and you don't lose anything that way. If you've selected the other field when you're entering in an observation, just be sure to include a brief description of no more than 40 characters. And in between actual observations, so if you have multiple observations that you've conducted, be sure you log out and then log back in to start the next one. There's oftentimes going to be a timeout issue if you don't. And then lastly, whenever you're inputting the negative classroom scores, whenever you're putting in observation results, the negative classroom scores, put those in as you've scored them. Don't convert them first. The system will convert them for you, and if you put them in as converted scores, it'll double convert it, and we'll wind up with scores that don't really resemble what the originals should be. All right, so here's a brief overview to kind of put your role in context. So what we're looking at here is a kind of a hierarchy from people at the top, which is the department, to observers at the bottom, and the amount of permissions that they have within the site. So like I said, people kind of at the top of this list are people here at the department, and we can pretty much go in and look at every classroom, every site, every network, regardless of what the settings are there. Below us are the network coordinators. They're limited to the network that they're in, but they still have quite a bit of access. Your third-party coordinators, this is the P-Card Center. Their only role is to assign observations for third-party observations. They're not going to be looking at your site or moving anything around in your classrooms or editing really anything other than, like I said, assigning observations and making sure that observation results are put in the portal properly. But then there's you, the site coordinator. Site coordinators, your primary responsibility is going to be setting up classrooms at your site and making sure those classrooms reflect the reality of what's going on at your site. You'll notice there's site coordinator and then there's site coordinator read-only. We're going to talk about that here in just one second. And then at the bottom are observers. Observers have some of the least number of things they can do within the portal. And that's just because their only real role in this part of the process is putting in their results. And you'll see a little bit of that on today's webinar. So like I mentioned, there's two different types of site coordinator access. There's the regular type and there's read-only. If you're added as a read-only coordinator, when you log into the portal, you're only going to be able to view things, you're not going to be able to edit anything. This may be because maybe the principal is the only one who wants the permission to edit things, but there's maybe a master teacher or a lead teacher that needs to go in there and have the ability to look at certain things. It's really just an extra layer of functionality for networks to use, and you feel free to use it to your advantage. There's no specific requirement there. All right, so let's look at what can actually happen within the portal. So to start us off, we have here there's a legend of all the different icons that you're going to see while you're actually in the portal. I'm not going to read all these to you. Just note that these remain consistent in their function no matter what page you're on in the portal. So you'll see them, don't be intimidated by them. They're pretty intuitive, but we just wanted to provide up front a list of all the different icons that you may see. So if you are tasked with setting up your site, what you're looking at here in box number 1 is the name of a site that's listed within a network. You'll click on that I button there underneath info, and that will generate a box that looks like what you see in number 2. It's got various information you can put in about this particular site. Every site requires a site administrator, their first name, their last name, and then their email is required. A title and a phone number are not required, although you're welcome to put those in there. Once that stuff is all in there, you go down there to the bottom and you can toggle the different site types, whether it's a school or Head Start or maybe a childcare facility, as well as the site configuration, so infant, toddler, or pre-K. Then you're ready to set up classrooms, and this is where site coordinators are going to be particularly useful because you guys are going to have the best understanding of what's going on at your site. So once the site's set up, you'll click on that button there that says classrooms. There's a wrench icon, and it's going to generate a list of all the classrooms that are either set up at your site or give you the ability to set up a new classroom. So in the case of this example, There are already 8 classrooms that are set up. If there was a 9th classroom that needed to be added, you go down to the bottom and you click Add New Classroom Record. When you do this, you're going to see a window pop up that says Add or Update Classroom. This is where you can put in the classroom name, do the classroom configuration, put in the lead teacher. Just a reminder that once you put that classroom configuration in, it cannot be edited. So be sure you're getting that right, and it will not change over the course of the year. Once your classrooms are all set up, lead agents that would then schedule and assign observations. Those observers will come to your site, they'll observe the classrooms in which they're assigned, and then they will put in their observer results. And this is where you can then see what those observation results are. So if you're back on the home page, you click on the site that you're assigned to, you see your list of classrooms. There's going to be a green arrow icon that you can click on once there is observer data that has been put in. So in this example, there was an observation that occurred on November 9th at 8 a.m., gives you the name of the observer, and then you can click that green arrow icon, and you're going to see the report. It may be useful to you to save it or print it. You are free to do this, of course. There's a floppy disk icon that you can click on at the top right or kind of top center that gives you the option to print it either in Excel, PDF, or Word. Or you can also run a report that's a site level report. You'll go up to the top there where it says reports. You'll click on that button and you'll click on the site level reports. And there will be a list of available reports that you can run. There's thorough explanation of each of these reports in the observation system user guide. What follows here are sort of a condensed description of each of them. The reality here is that you're probably going to learn best by just going in there and playing around with them, seeing what they look like, what kind of data is available. You might want to compare 2 different reports depending on what you're trying to get at. A lot of the reports are pretty self-explanatory. For instance, you can look at the domain averages for all the classrooms at your site, or the dimension averages, etc. You can also see at your site what observations have been completed or what are planned, or which classrooms are missing an observation. A couple of final notes to keep in mind. All classrooms entered into the fall will be rolled over to the spring automatically. If there are any new classrooms that get opened between October 1 and December 15th, you do not add them to the class online portal until the start of the spring observation period, which is January 1. Site coordinators will need to update any classroom details and delete classrooms between the start of the spring observation period, January 1, and February 1. Okay, so in closing here, what supports exist for you as a site coordinator? There are similar webinars posted on the Louisiana Believes website to help out observers and other sites in the class online portal. If you make a mistake, don't panic. That's what we're here for. We're here to support you and figure out how to best solve the problem. You can always email earlychildhood@la.gov if you happen to close a classroom. A reminder, do not open a new classroom because the observation scores from 2 classrooms cannot be combined. If there's an error with an observation score that you notice, there is a process that we follow for that. You need to submit an error correction form. And then lastly, when you're using the portal, it always works best with Google Chrome. So make sure you're looking at that before you email us, before you reach out. It could just be a simple browser issue. Lastly, for anything else, if there's technical support problems, feel free to email systemsupport@la.gov. You can always take a look at the observation system user guide. Any other supports that you may have a problem with, again, you can email us at earlychildhood@la.gov, or as a point of first contact, feel free to reach out to the lead agency if you have any problems you think that they can solve. Just want to thank you for your time today and all that you do. This process is pretty impossible without the people who are directly interacting with our teachers and students. And so thank you guys for all that you do. We're here to support you. And if you ever need anything, don't feel like you can't reach out. Thanks a lot. Take care. Have a great day.